Welcome, chosen ones. The greatest trick the oppressors ever pulled was convincing you that your power did not exist. And now that you've discovered it, they are afraid. Did you know that studies suggest that only 1% of the world's population owns more than half of its wealth? That is not simply a coincidence. It's a well-constructed hierarchy intended to keep the majority sleepy. But here's the kicker. They did not plan for you. You, the chosen one, are not here to just accept the script they have written. You're an outlier in their algorithm, a bug in their matrix. And let's be honest, they're sweating bullets. Because whenever you stand up, speak out, or just refuse to cooperate, you do not just break the rules, you rewrite them. What makes this even more amusing is that they have spent decades honing their subjugation. Nevertheless, a single person with clarity, boldness, and conviction may overthrow millennia of dominance. You are not slaughtering demons for pleasure. You're undermining their strategy, releasing those who had no idea they were in shackles. So brace up, because we're going to look into why the mighty dread you and how every move you make shakes their empire to its core. Let's get to it. Let us start with that. Number 1. You interrupt generational cycles, even if it feels chaotic. You're not simply living your life. You are disrupting cycles that have persisted for generations. The challenges you're facing are not new. They have been handed down, normalized, and integrated into families, communities, and whole cultures. These cycles of poison, quiet, and acquiescence are the underpinnings of tyranny. And most people don't challenge them because it's simpler to live with them than to break them down. But not you. You've undoubtedly observed that your route is more difficult, heavier, and lonelier than those around you. That is not a coincidence. When you started questioning what had been normal for so long, whether it was generational trauma, obsolete customs, or systematic deception, you were a threat to the system that relied on those patterns to continue. This resistance you're experiencing is not random. It's because you are the first to say enough. What makes this so dangerous for those in positions of power, as well as those closest to you, is that disrupting a cycle exposes it for what it is, a decision, not an irreversible fact. When you choose to disrupt the pattern, you force people to face the reality. They could have also shattered it, but they chose not to. This understanding makes people uncomfortable or perhaps enraged. Fighting these cycles does not make you stronger. It stems from a refusal to engage in them. You are demonstrating a new, freer method, which poses a challenge to everyone who profits from the existing quo, whether they are aware of it. The hostility you meet is motivated by a fear of your freedom. You're not only mending yourself, you are sending shockwaves through a system that relies on people remaining broken. That's why they push back so aggressively, since your failure to conform makes their control appear weak. And in many respects, it is, number 2, systems fear exposure rather than resistance. Oppression does not thrive on strength. It thrives upon secrecy. Power systems do not want you to attack them, since that is not the real threat. What scares them is seeing through their well-created illusions. They've spent generations consolidating their authority as a house of cards kept together by deception. And as soon as you realize this, their entire structure begins to shake. The fact is that oppressors depend on people believing their systems are immutable. They want you to believe their authority is natural. Their regulations are unavoidable, and their authority is eternal. But here's the catch. None of it is genuine. Their control exists because people accept it, not because it is unstoppable. When you start questioning what you've been told, when you stop mindlessly embracing their narratives, you become a threat they can't handle. They are not afraid of your pushback. It is your clarity. It's how you can lift the veil of their power and reveal it for what it is: manipulation and terror tactics. This is why they distract you with noise and strife, thinking you won't discover the flaws in their foundation. They don't want you to comprehend how important your involvement is to the whole system. The illusion is irreversible once you see it. And when others learn about what you've discovered, it spreads like wildfire. That is what scares people in power. The aftermath of your waking. They are not afraid of your fury. They are afraid of the inquiries you may raise in others. Because the moment people begin to question why or who profits from this, their grasp on power begins to erode. Their biggest fear is not rebellion. It is being exposed for what it is: flimsy, empty, and completely dependent on the falsehoods you are taking down. Number 3, you possess an energy that they cannot reproduce or steal. No matter how hard they try, they will be unable to reproduce your ability. It's not derived from titles, money, or external approval. It's inherent, raw, and impenetrable. This is what frightens people in authority. They rely on control systems designed for manipulation and exploitation. However, your energy functions at a level that they cannot match. It's real and limitless. And regardless of what they do, they cannot own or damage it. What distinguishes you is that your power is not transactional. It does not rely on taking from others or climbing over someone else to succeed. While they create systems based on fear and greed, your energy originates from a deeper, unshakable source. That's what makes it so risky for them. It cannot be altered or controlled. They'll never grasp what you emanate. True freedom. This is why they fight so hard to undermine you. They want you to question yourself because they know the timing. You are well aware of what you are carrying. They are unable to touch you. They attempt to tell you that your power isn't genuine, that it's meaningless, since embracing it fully would reveal how weak and reliant their systems truly are. Your energy not only threatens their control, but also motivates others to liberate themselves. It is infectious. People see you standing in your truth, and it awakens something in them that frightens oppressors because they know they can't contain an energy that spreads. Their power is based on fear, isolation, and division. However, your mere presence demonstrates that another option exists. You're not simply disturbing their systems. You're demonstrating the world that such systems were never essential in the first place. They have no idea how to stop this. Number 4, they weaponize solitude because they understand that unification will destroy them. Your loneliness is not a coincidence. It is by design. The oppressive systems grasp something important. Your strength is not just derived from your physical characteristics. It's what occurs when you connect with others who are similar to you. If individuals like you, who see through falsehoods, question the current quo, and refuse to comply, banded together, their entire control structure would crumble. That's why they try so hard to keep you separated. This is not only about physical loneliness. It is emotional, cerebral, and even spiritual. They exploit situations to make you feel like an outcast, that you don't belong. They promote narratives that cause you to doubt yourself or question your value, thinking you will absorb their lies and remain tiny. They create circumstances in which you feel misunderstood or out of place, prompting you to withdraw from people rather than risk rejection. It's all a ploy to dissuade you from making the kinds of relationships that may spark genuine change. But here's the thing, your seclusion proves your potential. They wouldn't bother separating you from others if they didn't consider you a threat. They understand the power of unification and dread what may happen if you found your tribe. If you team up with others who share your clarity, confidence, and vision. When like-minded people get together, illusions of control crumble. Isolation is their weapon. However, connection is your strength. Every effort they make to keep you apart demonstrates how much they fear the power of your union. They understand that once you discover people who share your worldview, their control becomes useless. You aren't alone because you're weak. You are alone because your strength, when joined with that of others, would put an end to the game. Number 5, you are live proof that oppression is not natural. It is engineered. Oppression has always been marketed as something inescapable, a fact of existence, an aspect of human nature. Those in power have established their structures on the assumption that inequality is simply the way the world works. But here you are, prospering in ways they did not expect, living proof that oppression is not natural, but something they established and continue to impose. Your sheer presence breaks their carefully crafted story. What worries them the most is that you question the notion that people are helpless. You refuse to accept the constraints they've imposed, and each step you take toward freedom demonstrates to others that those limits were never genuine in the first place. The fact that you climb despite the barriers they've thrown in your path is incontrovertible proof that oppression is not an unavoidable force. It is a mechanism intended to keep individuals in line. It may also be disassembled, just like any other system. Your tenacity reveals the deception they rely on, that freedom is unattainable without their consent. By prospering outside their constraints, you demonstrate that freedom is not something they provide. It is something you claim. They spent years teaching people that their weight is normal. But as you throw off the weight and stand erect, everyone else wonders why they are still bending. This dreadful yearning motivates them, since their power is based on people feeling they are imprisoned. The illusion dissolves when more people realize what you've accomplished and what you've demonstrated to be achievable. Oppression is not a fact of existence. It is a decision taken by those who benefit from it. And your existence is live, breathing proof that their decision may be reversed. You aren't justifying oppression. You are reminding the world that freedom is not unique. It is the default, and everything else is a lie. Number 6, your grief foreshadows their impending downfall. Your suffering is more than simply something you have to deal with. It's something you convert every time you take the pain they've caused you and turn it into strength, wisdom, or action. You strike at the heart of their control. They rely on your misery to keep you tiny, tear you down, or silence you. But when you rise from it, you do something considerably more significant. You convert their oppressive instruments into the seeds of their downfall. Oppressors have always used pain to preserve power. They inflict agony in order to instill fear, submission, and division, with the goal of crushing your spirit. They don't account for your power to transform that suffering into liberation, not for yourself, but for others. Every time you refuse to let your misery define you, and instead channel it into something worthwhile, you expose their biggest weakness, their inability to genuinely dominate you. Your metamorphosis is a prophecy they've been attempting to conceal. They understand that suffering is a double-edged sword, and when handled by someone who refuses to surrender, it becomes a weapon against them. Your perseverance is more than simply a personal achievement. It's a warning that their systems aren't as stable as they think. Each time you transform anguish into action, it marks the start of their disintegration. This is not just your struggle. It's their responsibility. Your ability to change what was intended to destroy you into something strong sends a message that they cannot ignore. Their dominance is not permanent, and their systems are not impervious. Your grief is a prophecy, and every step you take toward freedom serves as a reminder that their downfall is unavoidable. They establish their authority on the assumption that you'd remain broken. They were wrong. Number 7. You do not fight systems. You make them obsolete. Oppressive systems thrive on confrontation. They're meant to entice you into their game, forcing you to battle on their terms and under their rules. That's where they have power. They create in the chaos. But when you stop arguing and start developing something completely else, you reveal the truth. They don't want anyone to realize their systems are unnecessary. You don't need to beat them, since you are teaching the world how to live without them. This scares them. Oppressors depend on being the sole option. They rely on others believing that their way, control, hierarchy, and exploitation are the only ways for society to work. However, when you move outside of their framework and develop alternatives, you make their methods appear antiquated. You demonstrate that life, society, and growth may exist without their intervention. You aren't playing their game, which is what they are most concerned about. They've spent ages fixing the rules so they can always win. But you aren't concerned about winning or losing. You've gone off the field rather than confronting their persecution. You're creating something better, more liberating, and beneficial to everybody. And as you generate more alternatives, their importance disappears. What makes this even more potent is how contagious it is for others to witness you succeeding outside of the system. It ignites something in them. It demonstrates that people do not have to battle indefinitely for scraps within a shattered framework. They may move away and create something on their own. That is how oppression is genuinely dismantled, by outgrowing it rather than battling it. They want you to believe that the only road forward is via them. But you're demonstrating that their systems are not the future. They're a relic. Nothing disturbs them more than the realization that the world can and will go on without them. Number 8, they dread the questions you raise, not the solutions you provide. Oppression is not based on truth. It is based on well-prepared falsehoods. Those in authority put a lot of work into creating tales that justify their rule. Stories are created to make people obedient and unthinking. They dread curiosity more than revolt, because when people start asking the correct questions, their entire system crumbles. This is where your power comes in. It is not about the solutions you provide or the speeches you deliver. It is about how you portray yourself, your decisions, and your clarity. Make people look carefully at things they've always taken for granted. Oppressors rely on people to blindly accept their interpretation of reality. But you, with your daring to question and reluctance to accept the status quo, sow seeds of doubt in the minds of those who observe you. These seeds are deadly. A simple question: why is it this way? Who gains from this? What if there was another way? Can escalate into a complete loss of control. When individuals begin to think for themselves, the falsehoods lose their effectiveness. Oppressors understand that once fractures develop in their narrative, they cannot repair them quickly enough to prevent the collapse. Your capacity to elicit such inquiries is what makes you so dangerous. You are not only stating the truth, you are encouraging others to find their own. You don't tell others what to think. You demonstrate that they can think. That frightens those in power because they realize their control is only effective as long as people remain sleeping. Oppressors dread independent minds more than any weapon because once someone begins to question their power, they can no longer be controlled by it. And you? You're a living question mark in a world where people prefer to use periods. Number 9. They cannot control what they do not comprehend. Oppressors thrive on predictability. Their authority is based on their ability to manage every variable and keep everything moving within the lines they've drawn. They are methodical, calculated, and intent on maintaining the status quo because it is predictable. But here's the catch. You don't follow their guidelines. You move in dimensions beyond their ability to measure, map, and hence control. Your authority does not come from adhering to the rules that they have established. It stems from your capacity to perceive what others can't. You are directed by an intuition that sees through their skillfully crafted illusions, a spiritual understanding that ties you to something greater than their control mechanisms. Whether you realize it or not, your perception of the invisible is what genuinely frightens people. They have control over data. They can track patterns, but not individuals. You want a programmable machine or a person. They can forecast your capacity to move fluidly, tap into energies, and grasp things beyond the material world, but they just cannot fathom it. They have no control over you because you are unexpected, unknown, and continually developing, which is a weakness they cannot afford. What they don't comprehend is beyond their control. This is why they work so hard to repress you, to compel you to fit into their narrow worldview. But the more they try to dominate you, the more you slip through their clutches, proving that their power is only effective if they can keep you trapped. When you're free to move in regions they can't see or measure, their grip on you breaks. You are proof that control only works when you are constrained, yet you are far from that. Number 10. Your quiet is not a kind of submission. Rather, it is a strategy. When you remain silent, those in authority frequently misinterpret it for acquiescence. They witness your immobility and believe they have succeeded, that you have been intimidated into silence, and that you are no longer a threat. They don't realize, however, that your quiet is not a sign of weakness. It's a deliberate tactic in a world that needs continual noise and activity. Stillness is one of your most effective instruments. The calm periods that they mistake for surrender are actually times of recalibration, when you gather your thoughts, observe, and plan your next move. You understand the importance of quiet because it helps you to contemplate, evaluate, and make judgments without the distraction of outside noise while they are busy. Assuming you've given up, you're silently increasing your strength and improving your plan. Oppressors thrive on continual action because it gives the illusion of control, but your silence shatters that illusion. You've realized that not every war needs to be fought in public. Not every decision needs to be taken quickly. Sometimes doing nothing is the most harmful thing you can do. While they wait for your response, you are planning for one that will catch them off guard. This is why they don't know how to treat you. They want you to be loud, belligerent, and engage on their terms, but you select your moments, striking when it matters and moving with purpose. When the moment comes, they believe your quiet is their win. However, in truth, it is your victory in the making. You are not succumbing to their pressure. You're taking advantage of it, knowing that your silence will eventually speak louder than any conflict. Number 11. You are the blueprint for freedom. They are unable to repress. Your life is not entirely your own. It's a roadmap for everyone willing to break free from the bonds that bound them. Every stride you take toward freedom, every time you choose liberty over obedience, you are not simply modifying your own reality. You are forging a path for others to follow. You are living proof that the chains are not permanent, that the constraints are self-imposed, and that there is always an escape. Those who gain from the control system recognize that if others begin to follow your lead, their grasp on power will weaken. That is why they fight so hard to silence you. They strive to obscure your light, disregard your quest, and declare your liberation unattainable. But what they don't realize is that your presence is a fire, a demonstration that no matter how hard they attempt to extinguish it, it will always encourage others to start their own. You are not merely protecting yourself against persecution. You are inspiring others to break their bonds as well. You're not just walking away from the system. You're teaching folks how to walk away with you. And as you progress, you leave a path of freedom, a road plan for anybody to follow. The most scary aspect of this for those in authority is that they can't prevent others from following your lead. You're not battling against them. You live in a way that renders their control irrelevant. Your quest to freedom is more than simply a personal accomplishment. It's a message to everyone who is still held back by fear and limitations. You can also leave. They are unable to regulate a movement that they do not anticipate. They absolutely cannot repress a model for freedom that is currently being practiced. Number 12, oppressors dread your power to make oppression appear ridiculous. The biggest dread of those in authority is not just revolt, but mocking when you fail to take their control mechanisms seriously. When you show the world how ludicrous their persecution is, you deprive them of power in ways they cannot recover from. They use fear and respect to preserve their supremacy. However, when you make their persecution appear dumb, you deprive them of both your resistance and a formidable weapon. Every time you confront hardship with inventiveness, elegance, and humor, you reveal the fundamental fragility of their authority. They want you to submit to their rules and accept their persecution as truth. But you refuse. You reverse the script, transforming their instruments of control, fear, guilt, and manipulation into sources of motivation and empowerment. You transform their poison into medication, making them appear powerless and tiny. It's not simply your opposition that makes them scared. It is your ability to laugh in the face of their efforts to dominate you. The powerful cannot tolerate being ridiculed because it weakens their authority more effectively than any conflict. When you refuse to be intimidated, when you make their rules and threats appear ridiculous, you reveal the reality. Their power is based on frail foundations that can simply be broken. They are most afraid of your weakness. It is how you build their strength. Look weak. You've learned to take their weapons and transform them into tools of liberation. Every time you make their tyranny into a comedy, you remove the terror that keeps others in check, demonstrating that the emperor wears no clothes. And it is the most harmful thing you can do to people in positions of power. Make them appear dumb and insignificant. Number 13, your existence causes them to face their own vulnerability. The greatest fear of people in authority is not that you would stand up and question them. You merely exist. Your sheer presence causes them to confront something they have desperately tried to escape. Their own fragility and power, as vast as it may appear, are nothing more than an illusion based on deceit, manipulation, and fear. And just being yourself serves as a reminder of this fact. They've expended so much energy telling the world that they have control, that their systems are unbreakable, and that their rule is unavoidable. But your actuality dispels that illusion. You do not need to dismantle their systems or launch a full-fledged insurrection. Simply stand in your truth. And this alone demonstrates how empty their constructions truly are. The more you embody your freedom, honesty, and strength, the weaker their barriers become beneath the weight of their own deception. You demonstrate to the world that their control isn't total. It is delicate, vulnerable, and based on fear. Everything changes when people see it and know the emperor is naked. Your duty is not to combat them directly. It's to be the live, breathing proof that their so-called strength is based on sand. You are the mirror that reflects their own vulnerability, and it frightens them because they know that the more people see this fact, the more control they lose. In a world where oppression flourishes by teaching others that resistance is pointless, your existence illustrates the opposite. They are not terrified by your conflict. It's the reality that every time you live your truth, you reveal how vulnerable their power is. They've worked really hard to construct a fortress of falsehoods, but you are the fracture in the foundation. They cannot mend. Finally, control systems are not as stable as they appear. They rely on fear, predictability, and the appearance of strength. However, simply being yourself demonstrates to the world that these institutions are nothing more than smoke and mirrors. The oppressors dread not your disobedience, but your capacity to render their entire existence obsolete. You do not need to fight countless conflicts since the truth is clear. Their authority crumbles in the face of people who refuse to be ruled by embodying freedom, choosing honesty over conformity, transforming suffering into strength, and converting quiet into strategy. You reveal the fragility of their hold. The more you stand up, the more you encourage others to do the same. You are not simply one person breaking free. You are a live example of the potential of emancipation, a model that others can follow. The strong may seek to repress, marginalize, or label you. But they can't stop the truth. You bear the reality that their dominance is fleeting and that you are the catalyst for its ultimate disintegration. You don't need to demolish them. They're already falling from the weight of their own falsehoods. And with each step you move ahead, their illusory dominion crumbles somewhat more. Your existence is their calculation. And no matter how hard they resist, the future you're creating is unstoppable. If this message resonates with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Let them know there's a new way of thinking, a new way to live and fight back. Subscribe to this channel. Hit the like button and leave a comment below. Let's keep the conversation going. Your voice matters. Please share this with everyone who needs to hear it, because the more we communicate the truth, the more difficult it is for them to deny. Together, we are creating something unstoppable and stable.